Herzlich willkommen bei Bewusst mit Hund, dem Podcast für Wissen, Bewusstheit und fürs Herz mit mir, Marlene Marlow, Hundetrainerin, Beziehungscoach für Hund und Mensch und Hypnosetherapeutin für den Menschen. Episode 19 features an approach to the term healing through consciousness and to my view of the world. Until further notice. Here we go. Healing through consciousness. What's that supposed to mean? It's time to properly introduce the term healing through consciousness, what I mean by that, and to introduce my work and world of thought. Hi. I'm Marlene, hypnotherapist and coach for humans and dog trainer and dog behavior consultant. I work therapeutically with humans and dogs and often with both together as a relationship coach for dogs and humans. With both practices, I am based in Berlin and in Brandenburg, in the countryside. As a dog trainer and relationship coach for dogs and humans, I mainly do home visits. In both areas, as a therapist for humans and as a dog coach, I also work online. I work with my clients in both fields, in German and also in English, so all English-speaking people are very welcome. If you are watching this, you're either watching my Instagram channel, Healing Through Consciousness, my YouTube channel of the same name, or some individual was so kind as to share this video somewhere. I'm writing a blog and publish a podcast called Conscious with Dog, not just for people with dogs, by the way. And you can find both on my dog trainer website and the podcast on Apple Music, on Spotify, and the aforementioned YouTube channel. I publish guided meditations for people with and without dogs, and you can find that on my hypnotherapy website and on the dog trainers page. And all on my YouTube channel. On Instagram and the YouTube channel, you will also find one or two of my poems. And who knows what the future will hold in store for me in terms of expression. You can find the links to everything on my Instagram page, Marlene Marlow _ in the bio. I have given my work, my view of the world, the headline, Healing Through Consciousness. Why healing? Why through consciousness? From my earliest childhood on, I have perceived everything around me as having a soul. Yes, even objects, but above all, nature, the entire animal world. I saw every animal, every tree, every plant as an individual, and I still do this till that day. Today I know that we call this animism. I perceive nature itself as divine, and today I know that's what we call pantheism. I'll mention that because what it leads to when everything has a soul, God is nature itself. Nature carries the divine within itself, and not as in the monotheistic, the one God religions. God stands outside of nature, above it. That will be one of our topics, and I'm mentioning it here in my introduction already. Since from an early age on, I perceived everything around me as animated, I also felt compassion, empathy for everything, and that is still the case today. For example, when I sort out a book or an armchair or clothes, I thank them when they leave. My view of nature, the plants, the animal world, is one that wants to protect and preserve. Not for me, not for the people, but for the sake of nature, the plants, the animals themselves. And that's a big difference. What the first and what the second leads to, that will also be part of the thoughts here on this channel. As a child, I thought that this is how all people see the world around them.
But as I got older, I learned that this is not the case, and I began to wonder why. Why do some people actually manage to destroy nature, be cruel to animals, and also to their own kind? I did know the principle of cause and effect already, and very early on, I identified an injury to the soul as the cause of a lack of compassion for oneself, one's own kind, nature, and an unconsciousness about that. An unconsciousness in terms of individual biography and cultural history. The two-time rootless modern human being is what I am calling that. On the one hand, the lack of stability in one's own biography, the lack of security of one's own inner child, and the various attempts to compensate that pain that comes with that by faster, further, higher, or by trying not to feel the pain through self-destruction, for example. And on the other hand, the loss of one's own cultural roots since Christianization, and thus the separation from nature. For healing, there must be a consciousness of both. On the one hand, a consciousness about oneself, from which compassion for oneself can arise, which does lay the basis for compassion towards people and nature. And this results in a recognition by the individual with nature. Nature and the individual come together with the knowledge that nature is our very essence. How do we gain consciousness for an individual through our work? First of all, we take a look at what shows up as a symptom. For example, the symptom related to a relationship issue would be recurring fear of loss that sabotage the relationship. The solution here would not be to avert relationships to avoid pain, but rather to investigate the causes which created the fear in the first place. In researching the causes, we look at what originally triggered this fear of loss. This is often a close look at one's childhood. As I said, this is how you attain a consciousness of yourself. The first step on the path to healing. And when it comes to healing, the path is clearly the goal. Foremost, it's about empathy with yourself, accepting yourself completely. It's about being good to oneself. Not in a moral sense, but in the sense of becoming free of fear, which the stronger this inner freedom becomes, which comes with this inner fearlessness, enables our true being to become, to be as we are meant to be, living the core self. This truthfulness with yourself in turn creates more compassion for yourself, a deep understanding of yourself, and real self-love. And this inevitably results in universal love. Through your self-knowledge, your judgment of yourself stops, and with that, the judgment of others. You do not gain a deep understanding of what is. You suddenly feel a deep understanding of everything that is and a love for everything. That doesn't mean to approve of everything in any way, but you can clearly start to live according to the premise, do no harm, but take no shit. And you clearly know how to distinguish one from the other. This is being real, and it's a lot of fun. You are conscious and therefore in the flow. This is how we bring people back in contact with themselves. That is the one part of their being where they can feel their roots again, their connection. But I spoke of being rootless in two ways. And the second missing root is clearly cultural, historical, and has led to devastating global effects over the past 2,000 years. I'm talking about the split between nature and culture, which is tragic. On the one hand, it robbed people of nature as their spiritual home, because we have to understand nature is the home of our soul, And on the other hand, along with this and thereby made possible, nature was exposed to destruction and exploitation to the point where we are worldwide today. When I made bullet points for my thoughts here in the last few days, I was sitting in my garden, and exactly at that point where I am right now in my talk, I took a break trying to figure out how to put my thoughts together so it will be one flow and I'm able to make myself clear. And the universe came as support. I thought, why not start reading the book I bought a few days ago? And I got to page 12. And what can I say? I will now read you a short passage from that book. You remember I just said nature is the home of our soul and spoke of our cultural historical roots. The book is called Rituals of Nature, with shamanic rituals to your own roots, and was written by Wolf-Dieter Storl, a German-American cultural anthropologist, ethnobotanist, and author. I'll read you now from that page 12. That's the book. Yes, our cultural roots go deep, deeper than the first sedentary settlements founded just under 10,000 years ago, deeper than the eternal city of Rome founded 2,500 years ago. In the Old Stone Age, I'm adding the Paleolithic, the oldest and longest epoch in human history, which began about 2.5 million years ago with the appearance of Homo habilis, the skilled human, whose carved stone tools were discovered in the Oldowan Valley in present-day Tanzania. I go again. In the Old Stone Age, Wolf-Dieter Storl says, our languages and symbols are rooted, with which we try to describe and understand the miracle of our existence. Basic techniques of housing and hunting, fairy tale motifs, children's games, and many elements of our medicine, from herbal knowledge to sweat lodges, go back to the Paleolithic primeval times. Likewise, shamanism, the knowledge of how to deal with the spirits which are effective in nature behind the surface. Man cannot afford to ignore this imprint that determines his being. He cannot afford to isolate himself from the spiritual background, from the earth and from nature, without falling into madness and destruction. Me pointing that out and even citing Wolf-Dieter Storl reveals that my work is of course about healing the individual, but actually it is about healing the connection between nature and culture. For me, healing the relationship between humans and nature, and thus stopping the destruction of nature, is the next step in the healing process of the entire system, because everything is connected. So, if we want to bring healing to the worldwide destruction of nature, we must also regard this as a symptom and conduct research into the causes. I already mentioned that one reason is the monotheistic concept of nature in our latitudes, culturally and historically, the Christian one. Historically, in contrast to the animistic pantheistic view of our forefather and foremothers in Europe, who, as I said, saw nature as divine, the Christian concept demonized nature and God was placed outside of it, above nature. Among other things, 2 formulas were given to men: subdue the earth and be fruitful and multiply. It was only through this that the exploitation of nature, our mother, the earth, and concepts such as colonialism, capitalism, and neoliberalism became possible. The one God religions are not the only reason why humanity has brought the earth to the edge where it is now, but a relevant one. So, with every phenomenon that shows itself to us, which needs healing, be it global or individual, biographical, we can look at what was the original cause of a development that, to stay with the examples just mentioned, led to such handling today with nature, or why a person has difficulty in relationships. That is, here in this context, becoming conscious. The chronological order is cause, development up to the actual state today, today's phenomenon. In the process of becoming aware, the sequence is reversed. Consideration of today's phenomenon, consideration of the development up to the current state today, discovery of the cause. Almost only when we know what the cause is, we can change something by bringing healing to the momentum that originally triggered it. As I said, we can use this process in a historical context and also in therapy. It's a bit like detective work. In hypnotherapy, the process is as follows. In a session before the actual trance journey, we first talk about what occupies the client. That would be the symptom that what shows up. Most of the time, people already have an idea of the causes that have led them to the point when they seek help. To the point, as I put it, that keeps them from living fully, living their highest self, their highest potential. That which is how they are meant to be before conditioning and trauma from childhood and society compromised that core self. In the inner world, we then embark on a journey to the triggering momentum that has led to this development to date. And so we can go back and heal this point and thus change the whole development and the current status quo. It is very important in my work that we don't demonize anything. It's all about integration. In almost all shamanic traditions, the shamans travel to the other world and bring healing to their clients. A wonderful healing tradition for thousands and thousands of years, and one I adore deeply and humbly. At the same time, what I really like about our work is that the clients travel themselves. I only accompany from the outside. You see the pictures yourself, and through that can gain a deep trust in your inner world, and above that, in your ability to heal self-empowered. This is the beginning of the path to true freedom, the inner freedom that inevitably leads to your outer freedom, and also, and this is very important to me, towards the freedom from me as your therapist. Form and content are congruent. This work that we are doing there, discovering and revealing the causes which answer the question for us, why is the world the way it is? Why am I the way I am? That is gaining consciousness. And only with this consciousness, healing can take place. It is also important to understand that just because I'm aware, I will not stop making mistakes, not stop hurting myself and others. The difference, however, is that I can name my part in the situation faster and faster and get back in touch with myself and the other person. That is situational healing through consciousness. And to get straight to the point, because it's so important to me. This healing, which I want to support with my being, my work, which is ultimately aimed towards the reconciliation of culture and nature globally and in each one of us, has clearly a political aspect. On the one hand, in the sense that the private is clearly political, when I position myself with my own consciousness as an element that is part of the solution for society, for nature, and for the planet, instead of being part of the problem. And in addition, I also mean consciousness in a very concrete political sense, in the sense of a critique of capitalism, a critique of neoliberalism. Here, as I said, consciousness is questioning of the processes that have led society to this point where it is now. And, as already mentioned, we are looking very clearly at the emergence of monotheistic religion worldwide and the catastrophic global effects of its missionary work worldwide. Regarding capitalism, we have a fascinating entanglement. It is one thing to understand the mechanism of capitalism and why the individual is not perceived as a thinking, feeling being, but is interesting and noteworthy purely as a consumer. Why? At the same time, people respond to such treatment, to such interaction, allowed to be addressed in this way, is the other side that we have to understand, because exploitation always takes two. The one who exploits and the one who allows to be exploited. Which brings us back to the individual who may experience healing. It has come full circle. Healing of the earth is not possible without healing of the individual. If man is in conflict with himself, not in self-love, of course he is in conflict with his environment, his fellow human beings, with nature. The private is also political in this sense. One example of policies that can help heal the planet is the land back movement of the indigenous people around the world. From the Sami across Scandinavia to the indigenous people of the Arctic Circle, the tribes of Turtle Island by parts of the population today called Canada and USA, via the Maya in Mexico, not forgetting Hawaii, to the Maori in Aotearoa, today called New Zealand by parts of the population. And of course, the indigenous people of what we call Australia and many, many more indigenous people and tribes across the globe. Here it is a healing through consciousness in the purest sense. If people with a high level of consciousness, those who have always seen themselves as part of nature spiritually, have always viewed the earth as mother, as was the case with us in our part of the world before Christianization too. If people with such an understanding of nature take care of the land, then we go in the direction of healing, away from exploitation and destruction, away from subdue the earth, towards living a true connection between humans and nature. Humans as part of nature, no more and no less. Humans in the best sense as the keeper of nature, and thus as the keeper of our own existence. It only works together with nature. We humans not as part of the problem, but as part of the solution. Healing is possible. It takes consciousness. May all beings be happy.